A little while ago, Generation Zero added new experimental weapons to the game. Now, these were not really met with very much praise. They were extremely underpowered and all around impractical and not a whole lot of fun to use. So, recently, well, today, as I'm recording this, they put out a patch that promised to buff two of them. They did not buff the hunting rifle, so it will not get any mention in this video, but the patch notes say that they buffed the experimental KVM-89 and the experimental revolver. So we're going to take a look and see if these guns are better now and if they are maybe worth using now. So let's have a look. Let's start with the revolver. Now this clip you're seeing right now is from before this update, so when the new XPs were first added into the game. This is when they were, in my opinion, and many others, too weak to use. So first I start with the 5 crown just to see how it goes. Takes it down pretty easily. This is a Phoenix class runner on skirmish difficulty. So few bullets takes down Phoenix class runner with if you hit them correctly. Not that surprising. Now let's get to the experimental. This is kind of underwhelming. It takes more than an entire cylinder to kill one of these runners, and it actually eats up all of the ammo I had, even though if I'd been using the 5 crown it would have been more than enough. We don't need to go further into this. If you've played the game at this time, you probably used this weapon and you saw how grossly underpowered it is. So let's get to how it is after the update. Now here's some footage from today when the update came out. I tried going to the same place, same difficulty, same enemies to make sure it's as consistent as possible and to give a good sample size. And of course I get distracted by loot because I'm a greedy weirdo. But the important thing to note here is I start again with the regular 5 crown revolver and 2-shot both the runners I use it on. And also I brought 60 bullets for this just to make sure I had enough this time around because I didn't last time. So I easily go through those 2 runners with the 5 crown, not that surprising. And then let's see what happens when I pull out the 6 crown. And I miss a few shots here, don't place them correctly, and I don't get maximum damage, so I don't do very well against this one runner here. But then, as you'll see pretty soon with the next runner, this weapon actually turns out to not be terrible. In fact, I one-shot it. I think I hit its fuel cell with this, but still, this would have never happened with the previous version of this gun. And yeah, I instantly plow through that whole group of them with that was like 3 runners with 1 cylinder. That was about the same 2 shots per runner as the 5 crown. So now let's take a look at the 89. So first in this clip, this is footage from before the update, I started by just shooting a KVM-59 just to get a benchmark of how much movement there is, how much recoil, so that I can accurately show how much worse the KVM-89 is. So, first off, aiming down sights before the update was fucking useless. You couldn't really aim with it at all, and I can barely keep it within the sweet spot there while standing still, let alone sprinting. And if it goes out of the sweet spot, it's borderline useless. It can't hit anything. So now let's compare that to post-update. Now here we are post-update, so let's take a look. So first off, wow, that's like about the same as the KVM-59, that spread there with the recoil, and I'm still able to keep it in the sweet spot when I'm having to sprint around, but it's way less punishing when it goes out of the sweet spot. Now also, according to the patch notes, I didn't get a chance to test this very accurately, but they also say that the damage was buffed too, which was another thing I suggested in my previous video. I basically said they should make it easier and less punishing to keep this in the sweet spot, or at least make it less awful outside the sweet spot, and to increase the overall damage to make it worth using. It seems like they've done both of those things here. So this is actually kind of interesting because now I'm actually being forced to seriously consider this weapon, because as you see here, this is about the same amount of recoil that the 59 has, which is outside the sweet spot. In the sweet spot, it's like a laser. But the 59's got about the same amount of recoil as this does outside the sweet spot, but now in the sweet spot, it becomes a laser that does a ton of damage, which was theoretically what it was supposed to be. So that's really interesting. I wonder, I'm going to have to do more testing, but this gun could actually be viable now. We'll see. So the hunting rifle, as I mentioned before, didn't get a buff, so I didn't talk about it much in this video or really gather any footage on it because it's completely the same as far as I know, unless I'm wrong about that and they secretly patched it without us knowing. So with the other two guns, though, this is kind of interesting because now I'm actually being forced to seriously consider whether or not they might be using, especially the KVM-89. I'm going to have to do some testing later, but this seems pretty good. I mean, about the same recoil as the 59 outside the sweet spot plus laser inside. That's not bad, actually, especially given that it supposedly has increased damage. So, we'll see. I'm actually not as negative towards these weapons as I used to be. The revolver also is actually decent now. It took about the same amount of ammo to kill the same amount of enemies as the 5 crown, and that was with me horribly misusing it. So, I'm sure if I actually put some effort into figuring out how to aim with it and where to shoot enemies with it, it might actually be a decent weapon. I'm going to have to seriously consider both of these guns now, and I'm very glad for that. Thank you, devs, for actually listening to the community about this. It'll be interesting to see what people do with these guns now because they actually are not useless now. I hope they give the same treatment to the hunting rifle too, because that gun, like these two, with a bit of a buff, could be very useful. Unfortunately, it hasn't gotten that treatment yet. But I'm very glad these two did, and I hope they do more, because these are actually kind of fun to use now, to be perfectly honest. I'm really happy that they listen to the community like this. It's something I respect greatly about this dev team and about how they've handled this game. They actually, first off, the entire idea of new experimental weapons was something the community asked for, so they did it. And then they at least partially fixed it now, from what I can tell, that the community said that wasn't quite what they wanted, which is really great. I'm actually very happy about this. So, yeah, that's my conclusion. I actually have to seriously think about these weapons now. And if you play the game, go ahead and try these out yourself. See how you like them with the new buff.